Hellenistic structure, which, if that doesn't mean anything to you, that's fine. I'm going to show you. So if you look at chapter 21, 24, actually in 24 starting in, chapter 24, both of these God's wrath. Chapter 21, it's God's wrath due to what Saul did. And we talked about that last week. 24 is about when David goes and counts fighting men. And parallels between them. Verse 8, we have David's and then in the middle, you have in chapter 21, verses 15 through the end, it talks about David's mighty men. So we've got God's wrath, first and last, and we have Song of Praise and the last. Whenever you have the structure, what's in the middle is the most important. And so we're going to focus on that. And as I read, we also talked last week how the Song of David at the end of Samuel parallels Hannah. One of the things that I did was look at see any things that were I'm going to look at verse 5 because this is the theme that I found in Hannah and in David's song. It says, "Has he not made with me an everlasting covenant, arranged and secured in every part?" And so as I looked at Hannah's and of promises, the word anointed, because in the Hebrew, anointed, I can't even say it. God's everlasting covenant, all the way through from Hannah to David, and in a minute we're going to go into the New Testament. Christ. And the covenant that God made with David is going to find its talking about where Christ is going to be the king. So take a look at 1 Samuel. So 1 Samuel chapter. One of the challenges that I would give you this week, take time to look at verse 10 and the end of it. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. Well, what's strange about Hannah talking about the king? Didn't have one yet. Remember, Hannah's going to give birth to Samuel, and Samuel's the one who's actually going to be the one who anoints. So, through the Old Testament, about the covenant one, let's turn to the New Testament and take a look at Mary and Zechariah's songs. So that's in Luke. And see if you don't find a few parallels. So Luke chapter 1, and it starts in verse 46, but I'm going to skip down to 54 and 55. He has helped his servant to Abraham and descendants forever, even to our fathers. So there we see the promise, the covenant that was given to Abraham descendants, praising him for allowing part of that. And then if you look just a few verses over to Zechariah's song, and verse 69, he has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David. So we've got the line here. Long ago. Salvation from our enemies and from the hand of all who hate us. You know, the role that John the Baptist is going to have to give his people the knowledge of salvation through the forgiveness of their sins. And so we see, I don't think it's an accident that God put these things together where we have this common thread that weaves through it. So now I'm going to ask you to do a strange thing, which, if you know me, unusual. I would like you to take out your phones, if you have your smartphone with you, and find pictures of Masada. It's just M-A-S-A-D-A. And if you don't have a phone, see if there's somebody near you that you can kind of look at. I have to have visual. M-A-S-A-D-A.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And when you find it, make sure the people around you can see it. This is, by tradition, this is one of the places that David hid from Saul. When you look at that picture, I'll wait. Everybody got it? What I want you to do is I want you to look at that and imagine David hiding from Saul. Do you think that was... Yeah, it's dead. It is, I mean, there is... And
Wasn't that a phone?
on it. And it actually did it so that this was amazing. He did an engineering structure so that, of course, it's in the desert. It would rain for one day. The water would be channeled down into a cistern, internal cistern, that would support 1,000 for 3 years.
Yeah, I see that on there. That's pretty cool.
Used slaves, probably Jewish slaves, to carry that water all the way up to the top to the swimming pool.
Oh my goodness.
If you can imagine.
I would swim there.
Yeah. So with mind, start Samuel 22 says David sang the words of this song when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said, "The Lord is my rock." Okay? Think about Masada. The Lord is my rock, my fortress and my deliverer. My God is my rock. Now, the interesting thing here in the Hebrew, the words rock are different. Put them together. The idea of being the fortress. Volumes, all in iambic pentameter.
Oh my goodness.
And he died before he got it finished. And those who read it go the same way. At least their interest.
Kill me over it.
Yeah. Hebrew, they rely upon parallelism. They say the same thing with different words, but meaning the same thing in one verse, which in many cases really helps those of us that translate the Hebrew, because sometimes there'll be a word that it's the only word that's ever used in the Bible. And you're kind of like, well, what does that word mean? Well, you look at the parallel line and you get an idea, oh, okay, so that's what he meant. So when he says, the Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer, my God is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation. This is all the same thought. And again, we know that Masada did a great job of protecting David, but David turns around and says, that's not where I'm safe. I'm safe in the Lord. And so, sometimes if you're facing difficulty and you're kind of, that unbelief and doubt creeps, God really do anything with this situation? You have to think back to Masada and say, the Lord is my rock. He is my stronghold, my refuge and my Savior. From violent men you save me. And this is all. It's almost as to be able to impress how much God is the one who has protected him. And we know, because we've read about all the trials that David went through in running away from Saul and, and all the attempts on his life. I call to the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and I am saved from my enemies. Remember that this is all about after he's from all his enemies. And whole imagery is so appropriate. We have just gone. distress, I called to the Lord. I called out to my God. From his temple, he heard my voice. And we've talked before about, and here we have the temple that is in heaven. So to see. But from his temple he heard my voice. My cry came to his ears. The earth trembled and quaked. The foundations of the heavens shook. They trembled because he was angry. You know that old commercial, it's not nice to fool with Mother Nature? Well, it's not a good idea to make God angry. If you've got the earth trembling, the foundations shaking, smoke rose from his nostrils, consuming fire came from his mouth, burning coals blazed out of it. Now, that's pretty angry. There are times that I've felt like that, but he parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. And I can just, did you see the pictures of the tornado that they had last night?
I heard that.
And the cloud it was just huge. And all God, and the of the wind, he soared. Darkness, his canopy around him, the dark rain clouds of the sky. And again, the picture that I have of that, we have this picture on the backyard. God. When David is calling out in distress to my God, do you think God is sufficient to help him? I think maybe. He's got a little bit of power. Out of the brightness of his presence, bolts of lightning blazed forth. Anybody see any lightning in the last few days? The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. And I was thinking, in the church that I was in New York, every year we had a bike trip where we would have about 200 people go on a bike trip for a week. And many while they one in the tent, and it was a little way struck the tree, and the lightning went down the tree. Plastic zipper on their sleeping bag. And so when of lightning forth, sort of. They were trying. They did need medical because they got burned from the zipper melted into their flesh. So the Lord thundered from heaven, this is 14, the voice of the Most High resounded. And you think about, we saw shot arrows and scattered the enemies, bolts of lightning and routed them. So, it's almost like that, cartoon character throws it at somebody. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth laid bare. At the rebuke of the Lord, at the blast of breath from his nostrils. This very dramatic language, and it's all the result of what? What caused God? Why was he angry? Scenario. Back in verse 7.
Was with David and Bathsheba?
His distress, David's distress.
It was David calling for help. And so when you call for help and your cause is righteous,
Well, just looking at 7 and 8 together, if you take a moment to see what's happening, in my distress, so I'm distressed, it's over my head, I can't do it. I called to the Lord, I called out to my God, and from his temple he heard my voice. My cry goes to his ears, and the earth trembled and quaked. Just let that. I can't do anything, but because he heard my cry, the earth trembles. To me, that's more powerful than faith the size of a mustard seed moves a mountain. This shakes the earth.
yeah, and it's all because
Prayer.
of
Independence.
prayer.
Prayer
Yep.
and dependence.
And
Wow, that's good.
so in verse 17, so that was arriving on the scene. Answer. Sometimes, do you think David, when he, in his distress and cried out, do you think he was all of this to be rescued? So not only did the Lord deliver him from his enemies, he brought me out into a spacious place. And why? He rescued me because he delighted in me. And again, that word delighted can be translated was greatly pleased. And I think about, when God said about Jesus, this is my son. I am greatly pleased with him. But the promise is for each. We And so all David had to do was cry out. God responded, not only rescued him, but then he took him out into a space. What do you have in your mind when I say place?
Open, like flowing field next to like a stream.
Okay.
Just, you can see like the grass swaying because it's just big, open.
Yeah,
Like very calm.
yep, meadow,
Green pastures from.
yep, yeah. That's exactly what
So
I,
I don't know if I picture like an actual place, but when it's like the removal from the chaos of the spiritual battle. Like, boom, boom, out of there, totally. Yeah, it's the removal from that chaos.
And so David goes from distress to this spacious place where he knows that the Lord is delighting in him. I mean, what a wonderful word, delighted. Don't you want the Lord to be delighted with you? And this next section, as I researched this, there were varying opinions as to when this psalm might have been written. And I'll tell you which way I go. But one is before he ever sinned with Bathsheba. And so I'll let you decide what you think. The Lord has dealt with me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands, he has rewarded me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord. I have not done evil by turning from my God. All his laws are before me. I have not turned away from his decrees. I have been blameless before him and have kept myself from sin. The Lord has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to my cleanness in his sight. So David here is kind of saying, you know, it's before he sinned with Bathsheba or after Nathan let him know that God had forgiven him.
I'd say before.
Okay?
It sounds to me like before, but, but does it fit in my mind afterwards with his understanding of forgiveness? Yes. So, I can see why there's debate.
Yeah, there is no, I'm not going to tell you which one's right and which one's wrong. There is no agreement. We do know that, as far as I could tell in my research, that going through
I would lean, if I needed to lean, towards early, because there is a difference of attitude of saying, it's still giving God credit, and it's not, even his righteousness, he's not taking full credit on his own behavior. There's things in there the Lord has protected and helped him to be blameless. But there is a difference between avoiding sin for the blessing of God, and then finding forgiveness because of sin and still finding the blessing of God. And hopefully we've all faced both kinds. I know we've all faced, sin and then forgiveness. But there's a difference when you look at some things that through God's strength we have avoided and said no to, where you go, I'm really glad that I've done that because God, I feel like God has blessed me because of that. I've been faithful to my wife. We've been married a long time. Since, what is it, 30 years? 40 years. 40 years was like 40 years?
How many years left?
It will be almost 38 years. Anyway, but I've been faithful to her, and that is God working in my life. And I do sense like the blessing that God has given us for being faithful to one another. And that's what it sounds like he's saying here. But have I ever sinned against my wife in other ways? Sure. Has she forgiven me? Yes. Is there a blessing for that? Yes. So,
Yeah. So,
One small thing, I do think it's probably before, that's my opinion, because of how we saw his attitude toward himself afterward.
yes.
He kept beating himself up. He did not find, he knew he was forgiven before the Lord, but he acted as if he was not forgiven.
That, right, the way he's like, just let Absalom do his things,
Yeah.
like it's almost like he,
There is a small chiasm there in that one section you just read from 21 to 25. The center point is, all his laws are before me. I have not turned away from his decrees. And that's such a cool picture, because I have, all his laws are before me. It's like he's walking along the path and all of the laws are right before him, and he's not turning from left to the right. He's just walking each step within God's laws. That's the picture that I get.
good observation there.
yep. Okay, moving on. 26. To the faithful, you show yourself faithful. To the blameless, you show yourself blameless. And what we're going to see. To the pure, you show yourself pure.
Here it comes.
But to the crooked, you show yourself shrewd. So that idea of being crooked is kind of like, well, let's see if I can manipulate God or manipulate people.
It's the wise
That's
woman.
verse
Yeah.
27. Yeah.
And God says, all right, you can do that,
Yeah.
but
I'm playing that. I can play that game.
yep, I can do it better than you can. If you want to be crooked, I'll be shrewd. You save the humble. And this is one of the, if you go back to Hannah's song and Mary's song especially, you'll see a lot in their songs talking about the humble. But your eyes are on the haughty. Why does he look at the haughty? To bring them low. You are my lamp, O Lord. The Lord turns my darkness into light. And I used to have, when I was teaching, clay lamps that you would strap on their sandals. When he says, you are my lamp, O Lord, and in Psalm 119, it talks about him being the light on our path. And they were just such cool little things to him, but they didn't survive to Kentucky. And so he's saying, you are my lamp, O Lord. I don't need those things strapped on my feet because I've got you. You turn my darkness into light. With your help, I can advance against a troop. With my God, I can scale a wall. And we're going to now enter a section where we've seen the mightiness of God, how he came in defense of David, but now we're going to see work in and through David. As for God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is flawless. Sounds an awful lot like Psalm 119. He is a shield for all who take refuge in him. And interestingly enough, the word shield that was back in verse 3, that was the buckler, the little short. This one is body shield. He is a shield for all who take refuge in him. Well, David certainly knows that because he called to him and he got an answer. For who is God besides the Lord? And who is the rock? There's the rock again. Except our God. It is God who arms me with strength and makes my way perfect. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. What are the feet of the deer like, Troy?
Very fast.
And they can jump.
Super quiet.
Yeah.
And I'm suspecting that the deer that he's referring to here are probably the kind of deer that you would find on Masada.
Ah.
You
like
know,
the
the
mountain
one-
goats that scale the sides of the cliffs?
Yeah. And it says, he enables me to stand on the heights. Think about Masada, standing on the heights. He trains my hands for battle. My arms can bend a bow of bronze. How about that, Troy? You got any bows of bronze? You give me your shield of victory. You stoop down to make me great. And that picture again of God stooping down. God stoops down to make David great. You broaden the path beneath me so that my ankles do not turn. And let me tell you, if you were trying to climb today to Masada, but they have a tramway to go up there. I guess you can take the path up, but you're in danger of your ankles turning. I pursued my enemies and crushed them. I did not turn back till they were destroyed. I crushed them completely and they could not rise. They fell beneath my feet. You armed me with strength for battle. You made my adversaries bow at my feet. You made my enemies turn their backs in flight, and I destroyed my foes. They cried for help, but there was no one to save them. To the Lord, but he did not answer. Now there's the opposite.
Wow.
David cries to the Lord, and he gets an answer. They no answer. I beat them as fine as the dust of the earth. I pounded and trampled them like mud in the streets. We have a little mud out there now. You have delivered me from the attacks of my people. You have preserved me as the head of nations. People I did not know are subject to me, and foreigners come cringing to me. As soon as they hear me, they obey me. They all lose heart. They come trembling from their strongholds. The Lord lives. Praise be to my rock. Exalted be God, the rock, my Savior. He is the God who avenges me, who puts the nations under me, who sets me free from my enemies. You exalted me above my foes. From violent men you rescued me. Therefore, I will praise you, O Lord, among the nations. I will sing praises to your name. He gives his king great victories. He shows unfailing kindness to his Messiah, to David and his descendants forever. I'm going to stop there, even though it does continue into 24. I'll let you take that. Verse 7. People are sexed aside like thorns, which are not gathered with the hand. Whoever touches thorns uses a tool of iron or the shaft of a spear. Burned up where they lie. I don't know if you've had much experience with thorns, but where we used to live, we had thorn apple trees. Thorns that are about this long, and they have a poison on them. Third shift, and he's out in the yard working, and he got one in his knuckle, and he called me from work, and said, you know, go to the emergency room. Do not.
Yeah.
So they're not only nasty but they're actually dangerous.
I love the progression of this passage, this chapter, because it starts out in distress. Verse 7, in my distress. And then he cries out to the Lord. He remembers what God has done for him. He starts having so much confidence based on that, that now, you know, you start getting to verse 39 or 38, I pursue my enemies and crush them, I don't turn back. You know, like the confidence is there. So it starts with distress, you cry out to the Lord, you are encouraged, and it ends with worship. The Lord lives, praise be to my rock. And it's almost like, I mean, there's more things going on than this in this passage, but one of the things in this passage is this: God allows us to go through difficulty so that we cry out and show our dependence on Him, to be reminded of the good that He's done for us, to encourage us so that it ends up in worship.
And I think one of the reasons that God delighted in David was because David called out to him.
Yes, yes, yes.
One thing that stuck out to me in verse 19, it says, they confronted me in the day of my disaster, which reminds me so specifically of the passage about the body of armor, spiritual armor. Because it says in Ephesians that in the day of evil, when the day of evil comes, you should already be prepared with the full body, with the whole armor. And David was, because the next few verses that's where he says he has been blameless before God, he has kept himself from sin. And that's not to say he was perfect, obviously, even back then, even before Bathsheba. He was definitely not perfect, but he's kept himself from sin in many, many ways. And doing all that, and the way he loved the Lord's precepts and God's word, which when the word he had back then was pretty much just the Pentateuch. So it's a lot of stuff in there that's not really enjoyable for us to read, but he loved it. And David putting on the body of armor every day allowed for, in the day of his disaster, he cried out to the Lord, he called for help, and God was there. So
Yeah.
Ephesians 6.
And I get the feeling this might be before that sin with Bathsheba, because it's somewhere earlier, because the next thing in chapter 23 it says, now these are the last words of David. So like, make it clear this is later. And so it kind of leads me towards these are the earlier ones, but that should be a serious reminder to us all. You can live that straight, committed life and be blessed. But if you turn away and relax, the devil could get you at any time, just like he did with Bathsheba and David. So, you know, I imagine David would go back, if we're right on that, he would go back and I remember when I felt that way. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a reminder to always keep your guard up, always keep the full armor on.
I imagine it's like you let yourself get comfortable knowing what you've done, and all of a sudden you're like, you let yourself guard down, set guard down, and you're snatched at that moment, that's it.
Yep.
Thank you, Kathy.
Any other comments, questions? All right, we can be done.